right. So, welcome to the webinar How to Beat the Slump and Start to Live the Life You Are Meant to Live. Some of the benefits that you will experience in today's webinar is learn how to turn that frown upside down. Automatically, just by smiling, you will change the chemistry in your brain and start to feel better. But don't worry, there's more to the webinar that Chris will dive into because he's going to show us specific movements that we can do to clear emotional blockages from the tissues of the body. Yes, it's very exciting and cutting edge stuff here. Now, if you could please, we would very appreciate it if you could share this webinar. We're on Facebook Live at Chris Shelton Qigong. And if you stay till the very end, there is a special bonus just for you. Now, I wanted to take a moment and introduce but my favorite person, Chris Shelton. We're a husband and wife team, and Chris is just an absolute incredible human. Once you'll hear his story a little bit later in the presentation, but what he came from to where he is today is nothing short of a miracle. And he attributes his recovery and his place of being and his ability to pay it forward and help so many people around the world to Qigong, an ancient holistic healing practice. Chris has gone from, he's an artist, he was a butcher, a single father, to a renowned healer and martial artist. He's worked with thousands of people, from famous celebrities to stay-at-home moms to professional athletes to regular people like myself, just looking for transformation in their life. We have an office in Willow Glen. Yes, Joan, we're still on Lincoln Avenue. And we also have a satellite office in Burbank. Currently, we're here in Burbank, and we've been traveling back and forth from San Jose to Burbank, Burbank to San Jose. And that's just the plan. And also now, because of the expansion into the World Wide Web, we've been offering a lot of classes online. So since the lockdown, most of the classes have gone online, and we still continue the private practice both in Willow Glen, San Jose, and Burbank, California. Let's see, what else can I tell you about Chris? He has worked with so many people and all kinds of conditions, from chronic pain. He is an absolute expert at dealing with chronic pain, from back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, any kind of joint pain that you can imagine, all the way to conditions like anxiety, depression, cancer. So he helps to work with the energy systems of the body to create balance. And a lot of times what happens is people are searching in one avenue and they're not getting the answers that they're looking for. And then they give us a call, and Chris can help facilitate that type of healing in the body. And really, we've seen some miracles transpire. But if you ask Chris, he says it's not a miracle. He just understands how the energy flows in the body to release those blockages. And then the body does what it's supposed to do, which is creates balance and harmony. So without further ado, I wanted to bring Chris on. I'm going to switch the camera and pull up the presentation. If you just give me one moment here, and we'll also transfer the mic. Oh, there he is, looking so fine. So Chris, can you tell us, why should people be so excited about today's presentation?
Well, I think the reality of this time-space reality that we're in right now, there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of fear, there's been, people have lost loved ones, people have been able not to connect with loved ones or friends or family, and this isolation has created stress, and all kinds of stress. And it's created, as a result of stress, it's also created inflammation, it has also created depression, it has also higher rates of suicide right now, higher rates of spousal abuse, child abuse, and addictions. People that have been sober for years Now, unfortunately, as a result, a lot of people, there's been quite a few people who have relapsed, and as a result of their relapse, have passed away. So when we have these situations in our life, and this is what I'm so excited to talk about today, and thank you once again for joining me, is that if you have these situations, and we're going to have these situations come up, things in our life are going to wax and wane, ebb and flow. But if you have the tools necessary to be able to process what is happening in your outside environment, because that outside environment affects our inside environment and vice versa. And as we go through this webinar today, we're going to talk a little bit how our inside environment actually will show up as our external environment. So I'm so excited because if you have a practice that is so simple and valuable that can help prolong your life, eliminate pain, change the process of disease, and really allow you to live the life that you want to live, that is an invaluable practice. And as we get into this webinar today, we're going to hear a little bit about my story, how I got started with Qigong and Chinese medicine. But really, this is really like what Teresa was saying, this is really a webinar on how to get out of the slump, how to beat the burnout, how to recognize burnout, and really live the life that you want to live. Okay, so before we get started here, I really want us to take a moment, and I want us to go inward for a second. I want you to kind of check in with yourself, see how you are, if there's any pain or aches inside the body. Maybe you have a little bit of anxiety, maybe there's a little bit of depression, maybe a little bit tired, maybe you didn't sleep well last night. But on a scale of 1 to 10, I would like for you to take a mental note of how you feel right now. How is it that you feel right now? And we're not just talking about physical sensations, we're talking about emotionally, we're talking about mentally, we're talking about spiritually. How are you feeling? Just take that mental note, and then we're going to come back to this question towards the end of the webinar. All right, so since I'm teaching, this webinar is about Qigong. Qigong is an ancient holistic practice. It's the foundation of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. It's thousands of years old. A lot of people haven't heard of Qigong, and they'll say, well, is it like Tai Chi? And what I tell them is yes, Qigong is actually the foundation of Tai Chi as well. And what we're going to see here through this webinar is that these are very simple practices. And when people or clients contact us and they say, Chris, what is it that I should do? So should I practice Tai Chi or should I practice Qigong? I say, well, if you want something more physical, then I'd recommend doing Tai Chi. I love Tai Chi. I used to compete with it in tournaments as a martial art, and I used to give public demonstrations with my Sifu, Tony Wong, out of San Francisco. And so I love the art and the practice and the mindfulness of Tai Chi and the dedication to the practice, because the only way you get better at it is by repeating the practice over and over and over again. You have to keep on, they call it eating bitter. But what I love about Qigong is that it does not discriminate. It is something that you can take with you anywhere. You don't need any special clothing. You don't need a special yoga mat or anything like that. It's something literally that you can have in your arsenal to help to deal with stress. So one of my favorite meditations that I have on iTunes as well as on Google Play is called the Center and Balance Meditation. And the purpose of this meditation, I'm going to walk us all through it really quickly here. The purpose of this meditation, first and foremost, is to get you out of your head and back into your body. Number 2 is for you to be able to feel your body. There's a classical textbook called The Yellow Emperor's Classical Difficulties. The Yellow Emperor says that in order to fight disease after disease sets in is like digging a well after one has become thirsty, or forging one's weapons after engaging in battle. Wouldn't that be too late? So the whole idea of this meditation also is for you to be able to go inward in such a way to where you can actually feel when your organs are out of balance before disease sets in. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Hopefully the sound is back to normal now. No?
I want to scoot you in a little bit. But you can start the meditation.
Okay, so we're going to start the meditation. So I want you to start it from a seated or a standing position. And what's going to happen is that turn off your phone, make sure that there's no distractions. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and gently close our eyes and allow the breath to be long, steady, even, and deep into the lower abdomen. And as we inhale, we're going to allow for the breath of life to come in. So people call it prana, chi. And As we exhale, we feel ourselves becoming more and more relaxed. Now melting down first through the front of the body, through the front of the forehead, the eyebrows, the brow bone and eyes, through the nose, the cheeks, the ears. Inch by inch, cell by cell, tissue by tissue, flowing and pouring down into the upper chest and shoulders, the biceps, the elbow creases, the forearms, the wrists, the palms of the hands, leading all the way out to the fingertips. And from here, allow for this warm oil to melt down now into the upper chest, the flanks of the body, the abdomen, the waist, the groin, flowing and pouring through the front of the thighs, the knees, the shins, the ankles, the feet and toes, all connecting, all flowing off deep into the ground. And from there, just take a moment to scan the entire front of your body. Feel what's there. Taking a mental note. Feeling now the left and right sides of the body. And now feeling what's behind you. So once again, starting on the crown point and the top of the head. Allow for this warm oil to mount down through the scalp, touching every hair follicle, every cell, every tissue. Through the base of the neck, relaxing into the shoulders and then into the triceps, the elbows, the forearms, the wrists, the back of the hands, leading all the way out to the fingertips. Keeping the strong connection between heaven and earth, this warm oil now penetrates into the upper back, the mid back, the low back, flowing down through the waist, through the buttocks and hamstrings, through the back of the knees, the calves, the ankles, the heels, feet and toes, all connecting, all flowing off deep into the ground. And from there, now take a mental note of what's going on behind you. Feel from head to toe, simultaneously, what is there. Feeling now just as much in the back as you do in the front, as well as to the left and to the right. And now connecting to your higher power, whatever that may be. Imagine a white light that begins to permeate through the crown point at the top of the head. Now illuminating your senses of what's inside of you. You want this white light to saturate and fill up into the brain, the left and right hemispheres of the brain, the pineal, pituitary glands. Feel what's there, the space between the brain and the skull, visualizing, feeling. And now I want you to visualize and feel the nerves from behind the eyes that connect to the center of the brain stem. Now feeling the bones of the cheeks, the blood vessels, the capillaries, the sinus cavity, the inner ear, the upper palate of the mouth, the teeth, the gums, the tongue, the lower palate. And then from there, flowing and pouring down through each vertebra from the base of the skull down through the center of the neck and throat. You feel the air passageway, you visualize the arteries of the neck, branching off into the bones of the upper chest, back, and shoulders, feeling the fascia, the connective tissues. This white now permeates through the center of the biceps, triceps, and into the elbows. Now flowing into the forearms, the wrists, all the small bones and ligaments of the hands and fingers. Flowing down, the white light now touches every rib. Feels the ribs wrap around to the spinal vertebra on the back. Feel the intercostal spaces between the ribs. And now the heart is pulsating rhythm. The pericardium, the lungs. Feel what's there. You now visualize and feel the liver and gallbladder, the stomach and spleen on the left side of the body, now into the intestines, flowing down each vertebra of the spine into the kidneys, now into the urinary bladder, the sacrum, the bones of the legs, the femurs, the muscles surrounding them, and the femoral arteries that flow down through the inner aspect of the legs, through the groin, from the groin all the way down, extending and nurturing to the toes. And now feel the center of the knees, the shins, calves, ankles, feet and toes. And once again, just allow now for this white light to flow down deep into the ground. And now just take a moment to feel your body. Feel what's there. From here, we're slowly going to come back to the present. Gently batting our eyes open. Open up the eyes and relax. Wow, that's such a profound meditation, and it's so simple to do. And believe it or not, if you do that meditation enough, then what will happen is that you actually will be able to feel inside your body. As I talk to you now, anywhere that I want to place my mind into, I can feel inside my body from doing that meditation. And once again, the whole idea here is for you to be able to understand how your body functions. And when you realize and recognize, when you can actually sense or feel that your organs are out of balance, this is a precursor to disease. And so if we can ward off disease before disease sets in, then guess what? This empowers us. But even better, if we already are suffering or going through something, by doing these types of practices that are so simple to do, we are able to change the inflammation process and change the process of disease as well. Okay, so how did I get started? Well, this little video here is put together to kind of show a little bit about my background. I had a rough road in my younger years and in my 20s and 30s, honestly, also. But these practices were the things that I truly and honestly believed helped to transform my life. So sit back. This is going to take a few minutes here, and let's go ahead and begin. We break down the word Qigong. Qi is the life force energy that emanates through all living things, and Gong is a skill in which to harness this life force energy, and in this case, in order to improve your overall physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. I did a lot of crystal meth in the day, and by the time I was 17, I had my first heart attack from a meth overdose, and put myself into Taekwondo as a means to change my path, because I realized I was going to end up dead or in prison or both. I started competing right away with Taekwondo. I did my first competition when I got my yellow belt, And anyways, one night before a match, I was kicked in the back, which then dropped me to the ground. And doctor said, "Chris, you might be, if you're not careful, you might not ever walk again." My mom was a nurse, and she worked for this amazing chiropractor who father, grandfather, brother, sister were all chiropractors, but also she had studied Chinese medicine and homeopathy, and she had a massage therapist working for her at the time, and they wheeled me in there. And he was a martial artist, and he started talking to me about Qi. Well, now I'm 18 years old, and I'm like, yeah, right. So anyways, I had other health problems too. I had severe sinus problems, digestive problems. I had a slight case of OCD, and I had nothing to lose. I started taking these classes, and back then, this was over 25 years ago, nobody was practicing Qigong, or very few people were practicing Qigong in the United States. And I kid you not, after about 6 months of doing these practices every single day, you just wake up one day and you're like, wow, when did I stop living on the Sudafed and the Actifed, when I stopped living on the Tums and Kaopectate? You don't know when it changed. Like there's not a pinpoint date, but you know that there was a change. And I thought, wow, if a movement, gentle movement and guided meditation could create this much change inside my body, then there must be something to Chinese medicine.
So indirectly, because of the qigong, that instructor I was training with supposedly was teaching Chen style Tai Chi, and Chen style Tai Chi is a martial art. It's the oldest system of Tai Chi. A lot of people, when they hear of Tai Chi, they just think it's what old people do in the park. And so yeah, so what happened was after I broke away from him, and then I found my sifu, who I'm still with today, Tony Wong, who really teaches the traditional Chen Tai Chi. I mean, we're directly connected to Chen Village in China, in the Hunan province, and I started competing with Tai Chi in tournaments. I've been in Inside Kung Fu magazine a couple of times. Competed at the national level. I was ranked 10th in the U.S. at one point. So yeah, so I dabbled with that too. And then finally with Sancho, with Kung Lee's fight teams who introduced to Sancho. Thousands of years ago, before man started to evolve and lose their spiritual centers, and pay more attention to the ego, they were enlightened enough to understand how these internal organs function. They were enlightened enough to understand that there are channels in the body, and that there are actually points in the body, and that these vessels and channels and these organs correlate to the seasons, and correlate to different foods that you eat, correlate to different colors. And so that is the foundation of Chinese medicine, is recognizing when the organism itself and its internal environment is not much different than the external environment. So just like there can be a discord in your external environment, weather-wise or in your personal life, that's also can happen on the inside. So when someone says to me, even if it's a disease that I've never heard of before, and they say, "Can you help me with it?" My answer is yes, because I believe that anything is possible.
Okay, so there was a little background about how I got started, and yes, I grew up in an abusive home. There's a lot of neglect and such, and and before I was introduced to qigong, I had other health problems too. I had severe digestive issues, like I said. If I ate an avocado or salad, I was in a fetal position an hour later. If I ate any kind of animal fat, I was normally vomiting 1 or 2 hours later. I suffered from sinus infections all the time. And what was amazing about this practice is when it was introduced to me after my back injury, is that I couldn't tell you the exact time, like I was just saying in that video, but there was this change. And that change made me realize, like, wow, if a simple movement meditation could do this to me, there must be something to the practice. And so then that's when I started to dive deeper. And actually, that's when I started to go to school to study Chinese medicine. Okay, so our time here together, my number one goal here is for you to feel better than what you did for when you first logged on. That's why I asked you to take a mental note of how you're feeling on the scale of 1 to 10. Where you're at, where's your body at, where's your mind at, where are your emotions at? Taking that mental note, because my number one goal here from doing these simple practices is for you to feel better. I want you to gain clarity on how chronic stress can lead to disease and burnout. And we're going to also talk about what burnout is. What does that look like? What are the signs? What are the symptoms? And once again, the ultimate thing here is to give you simple tools and techniques for emotional wellness. And if you are in a slump, because there's still a lot of people in a slump out there, or if you're feeling stuck, or maybe you're at a crossroads in your life where with your career, you don't know what your life purpose is. By the end of today's webinar, I hope to give you enough tools and insight to maybe give you some different ideas, like, okay, well, maybe I could do this instead, or maybe I could apply these practices, maybe I could dive deeper into myself to be able to pull myself out of the slump, beat the burnout, and really ultimately here, it's really to live the life that you're meant to live. They say they were meant to live 120 years. What does that mean? That means that we are meant to live 120 years and dying a graceful death. And that means not suffering till the day that we die. And of all, yes, poor diet's going to kill you too if you eat too many processed foods, those types of things, that definitely injures your organ system. But once again, emotional trauma, and we're going to get into this also during this webinar, emotional stress and trauma is the leading cause of death and disease. And the cool thing about these practices is that they are remedies to help to combat that. So how to build a tolerance for challenge? Well, the ancient sages used to say that in order to become a sage, one must suffer in order to grow and to develop. Now, I know for myself, yes, I was born into some suffering, but also, too, if I was really to be quite honest with myself, I also created a lot of suffering for myself as well. And then as a result, guess what? I had to pay the consequences. But the whole idea of pain and suffering, and I'm finishing up my second book. Actually, I just finished it last night, sent it back or sent off the glossary of terms and the conclusion back to the editor. And one of the things that I said in the conclusion is that the thing about pain and suffering is that the whole idea is that for you to wake up, and for you to wake up and for you to grow. But sometimes what happens is our body gets stuck. We get stuck, and then as a result of that, then the suffering continues and continues. And I'm here to tell you today that there are simple ways in order for you to get unstuck. And by building up your underlying what we call as your upright chi or your original chi that's stored in the kidneys and building up our immune system, guess what happens? This builds our ability to handle stress. You know what's interesting is that your kidneys control the ears. The kidneys are the foundation basically for how long your life is going to be. It's derived at the time of conception between God, the universe, and your parents, and it predetermines your overall life, except for, if you got hit by a car or some freak disease or something like that. But really, how well do you fight off disease? How well do you fight off stress? And some people have a deeper bucket, meaning they can handle more stress than others. Some people have a more shallow bucket. They can't handle as much stress, or they can't handle as much stimuli because their system is not set up for it, or the system is overloaded and they can't handle too much stimuli like bright light, loud sounds, etc., etc. So how can we do this? How can we actually build our tolerance for challenge and our tolerance for change? Because if there's one thing for certain, change is always going to happen. And one of my favorite rappers, Tupac, he has that song Change. It's really the truth. Change is going to happen. And there's a book, an ancient philosophical book called the I Ching, and it's called the Book of Change and Unchanging Truths. And the purpose of the I Ching is to help to give you guidance, to help to understand and foresee the situations and upcoming circumstances based upon not man's laws, but based upon the laws of appropriateness. Anyways, when we collect all these tools together, guess what? This starts to cultivate our ability to be able to handle things like a pandemic, or things like losing a job, or things like losing a loved one. Okay, so simple, and I'm so excited about this. Okay, because this is what's happening now. Like what Parisa said, now right now we're in Los Angeles or in downtown Burbank, but we grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Parisa's parents own their own high-tech company. A lot of my clients, patients up in the Santa Clara County area or San Francisco Bay Area are in the high-tech industry. And one of the things that we're seeing is burnout. Pre-pandemic, we had this big contract with Santa Clara County, the EWD. We were in charge of the 23,000 employees for employee wellness. So I was giving talks to the county supervisors, to trauma nurses and doctors on disease prevention. And one of the things that we recognize, and what the EWD had recognized, is that our employees are getting burned out. So what are the warning signs for burnout? Well, warning signs could be digestive issues, for example. Maybe you eat something and you get bloated and a distended abdomen. Maybe you're suffering from migraines. Maybe now you have developed insomnia. Maybe now you have anxiety. Like I said earlier, anxiety right now is on the rise. Depression is on the rise. Maybe your bowels are off. Maybe you have constipation and you can't go to the bathroom, or maybe it's coming out the other way. There's so many different things. Maybe you're having migraines. There's so many different things that are coming up. Tinnitus. This is another thing I've been hearing. A lot of people suffering from tinnitus, which is ringing of the ears. Ringing of the ears is caused when there's a tremendous amount of stress on the body, which then weakens the kidney system and weakens the liver network. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, obviously, I always say that every day above ground is a good day. So we want to reverse. We want to reverse the damages that are being done from the stress that is being presented to us. And it's not only maybe in our homes or in our work life, it's what we're seeing on social media. It's what we're seeing on the news. We're being bombarded now, I'd say more than ever, from information, whether it's true or not, but information that is creating a lot of anxiety in people and creating, guess what, disease, and it's creating illnesses. So we want to be able to reverse. So Qigong is a simple practice with profound results. And it's something that if you start off doing every single day, 10 to 15 minutes, guess what? You'll start to realize that you have this resilience. And like what Parisa was saying in the opening here, is that we come then from a place of conscious action and non-reaction. When our nervous system is overloaded, we tend to just react. We tend to explode. We tend to have road rage. We tend to then, some people are tending to, like I said earlier, relapsing, turning to drugs or alcohol or food as a means to deal with the stress that they're feeling. So when we have simple practices that we could take with us anywhere, and you don't need any special clothing or anything, you do it in the car. Keep your eyes open though if you're doing it in the car. That's my one caution. You could do it inside your home. You could do it outside of the park. It does not matter. But being able to reverse, and this is what we're going to get into here with this webinar. And as a result, guess what happens? This resiliency, excuse me, this resiliency actually will come up as a result of doing this, and then your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health also improves in the process. Okay, so this is one of my favorite keynote speakers of all time. His name is Jim Rohn. He has a lot of books on tape in front of live audiences on character building, on financial success, and what that looks like. And the thing of it is that, as Jim Rohn said, is that the same wind blows on us all. It's the set of the sail that determines the outcome. Now, going back to my past, I could have continued to play the victim, to blame mommy and daddy for my situation and blame the system for my situation. But what I chose to do was that once I realized after the second heart attack that I was going to end up dead, in prison, or both, and I put myself into Taekwondo, and then I was introduced, after the back injury, I was introduced to the practice of Qigong. I realized, like, oh, wow, I have the ability within myself, with these simple practices, to change the direction of the sail. How many of you out there are suffering? Whether you're suffering financially, emotionally, maybe your relationship health is suffering. Maybe your health is suffering. Maybe your spiritual health is suffering. Maybe you're angry at God right now. Maybe or the Tao or the universe. Maybe you haven't found your life purpose. So what's very fascinating is that in Chinese astrology, it's based upon the 4 pillars. And these 4 pillars basically describes what they say is your fate, or the fortune you're going to bring to you and your family. But they say that they can't predict one's destiny once somebody starts to go inward and do these internal practices like Qigong, because what you're doing is you're changing your vibration. And once you change your vibration, guess what? That changes the direction of the sail. And what's very fascinating is that it may seem at first that the direction of the sail is only a little bit and your growth is only a little bit, but over time, guess what? You really see that you made such a huge shift in your life. And so it's so empowering to be able to look back and say, wow, I actually took charge of my health. I actually took charge of my mental emotional state, and I am living the ultimate life full of vibrancy, happiness, and I could share that then with somebody else. Okay, so from here, what are some of the benefits? Well, the benefits are endless. Like I said, for myself, the other thing I had too, I used to suffer from was OCD. I had pretty bad OCD. If you don't know what OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. I wasn't so bad to where I couldn't step over a crack or had to have my shoelaces tied a certain way. But I was definitely somebody who was checking the stove 30 times before going to bed, make sure it was off. I was definitely somebody that was checking the front door to make sure that it was locked. And so what happened was, some of the benefits of Qigong is that, guess what? You start to feel better, and you can't really pinpoint. You start to have more vitality. You start to have more energy. Once again, you start to have more resiliency to situations and stimuli that used to be a trigger for you. And the benefit is that then you also have the opportunity to share this with one another, to share this with your friends and with your family. When the pandemic hit, thanks to my friend, Hollywood physique expert, Eric the Trainer, he started the 7-day Chi Challenge on his Sleep Ninja show. And we did it for free. And after those 7 days, what happened was that we saw that we got such positive feedback from people, like, wow, that really helped us out so much. From there, what happened was that then we started, we continued the challenge, and then we started the Chi Club. And what we realized is that people we're benefiting in such a way that we couldn't even fully grasp. But I'll get into that a little bit more later on. Because when we increase our tolerance for challenge, for change, to get out of the slump, guess what? We are kinder to ourselves, and then we are a vibration that ripples outward. And so, like my master, Taoist master, Master Nia said, is that by practicing self-cultivation techniques, one develops the sensitivities to the energy circulating within the body. But it's not only within, but without, around the body. And then going back to that center and balance meditation, that's exactly what it does. You start to become so aware of your body that it's quite amazing, that you feel really how alive your body really is. Like, we just take it for granted that our stomach helps aid in rotting and ripening the food. We just take it for granted that our bowels move, and that our intestines work kind of like as a catalytic converter system, that even though there's impure food or fluid that's being pushed out as waste, there's still pure fluid that can actually circulate back up to the chest, or the spaces between the skin and the muscles, to be able to regulate the opening and the closing of the pores, to be able to regulate body temperature. I mean, our bodies are amazing. So when we get out of our head, because we're not so stressed so much, and back into our bodies, we really have the beautiful thing of being able to say, wow, my body is truly alive. Because there is definitely a mind-body connection. And what's really fascinating about this is that there's a group of scientists in Santa Cruz called HeartMath that are proving that our consciousness is not here, but it is actually here. And, several years ago, Priest and I had the opportunity to see Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle speak at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. I believe it was at UCLA. And so the sold out audience, Deepak Chopra said to the audience, he said, because they're sitting in two chairs, and there's a little desk table between both of them. There's a clear vase with a flower in it. And Deepak Chopra said, he goes, okay, everybody in the audience, I want you to stare at the rows between Eckhart Tolle and myself. So everybody stares at it. He says, now everybody close your eyes. So everybody closes their eyes. And he said to the audience, now, can everybody with their eyes closed still see the rows? And obviously everybody said yes. So I could still nodded yes. I could still see the rows. He said, open your eyes. He said, nowhere inside your brain is a rose. So what does this mean? This means that your brain is a reflection of your reality. Did you know when you actually give somebody a sincere hug that actually there's now a video of both hearts actually moving a little bit closer together? And this is the thing, is that when we open up our hearts, and what's interesting is that, and when we talk about disease, when we get into that section of this presentation, our hearts are like the emperor empress of the body. They dictate how much of an emotion is going to be expressed or suppressed. And so by doing these simple practices, yes, we actually have a mind-body connection, or heart-mind-body connection. How many times, I don't know, growing up, if you had a relationship, a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever, and you knew you should break up with them, but you don't, because your heart and your mind are not in congruency together, right? They're not aligned, right? So we have experienced this in our life, and this is what I'm saying. And I know for myself, I mean, I had dysfunctional relationships, two previous dysfunctional marriages, dysfunctional relationships between that. Why? Because I learned from my parents' dysfunction, so I was carrying on the same pattern, right? So my heart definitely was closed off before. So before I met Parisa, what had happened was that after the second failed marriage, and then another bad relationship ending after that, I realized, like, well, wow, I'm drawing in crazy into my life, but there's something actually crazy about me. So I started to dive in deeper and really started to open up my heart. Once I started to open up my heart more and started to process these past traumas at a much, much deeper layer, then guess what happened? I was able to actually draw in what actually I needed to fulfill my life. Because the thing about stress is that our minds are more powerful than we realize. I have a saying when I talk people through certain meditations in Qigong, is that allow your imagination to lead the mind, and the mind to lead the smooth flow of the qi. So guess what? Our minds, we can actually manifest and we create. I believe in things like quantum physics. I love the movie The Secret, or What the bleep do we know about this world? One of my favorite quantum physicists who produced What the Bleep Do We Know About This World is William Arntz. And what's amazing is I met William Arntz on a show, on a television show called Good Morning La La Land. And he was talking about his new book that he actually released about 2 years ago. And it's called How to Suffer in 10 Easy Steps. And he's such a funny and amazing quantum physicist. But basically what we're talking about here is like what we think about, we bring about. And this could be a totally different webinar, but yes, how we talk to ourselves, how we allow other people to talk to us is really powerful. So we have to be very mindful that our minds are very powerful. But guess what? Once you start to implement these practices in your life, and you still want to do other things, you still want to make sure that you're sleeping enough, you still want to make sure that you're hydrating enough, you still want to make sure you're going for walks, having physical exercise is still very important to do. But a lot of times, and I see this in clinical practice over and over again, where somebody is physically fit, but they're still dying of some specific disease, or they're suffering from some sort of inflammatory disease. Because guess what? We all deserve, you deserve to live the life that you want to live. Okay, one of my favorite practices here, and this tool here, if you're somebody brand new, welcome. And thank you so much once again for joining us on this webinar. This is one of my favorite practices is shake it off, or we call it shaking the tree. You know, shake it off like that Taylor Swift song, because do you realize that we're one of the only mammals or animals on land that does not shake it off when something happens to us? Think about it. Something gets you upset. Somebody cuts you off. What happens? Yeah, you may say a few words or whatever, but you internalize it. Or maybe your boss or coworker said or done something. And what do? You internalize it. You feel all this tension inside your body. The biggest word right now out there, besides pandemic, the biggest word out there right now is inflammation. So in the medical field right now, in papers, inflammation. And we're seeing it as Crohn's disease. We're seeing it as colitis. We're seeing it as IBS. We're seeing it as GERD and acid reflux. We're seeing it as Lyme disease. There's so many things that we're seeing as a result of this inflammation. So literally, and you could try this, I'm going to stay from a seated position, but next time somebody upsets you, or you have a situation that you see or witness that upsets you, instead of you internalizing it, which creates more inflammation, then guess what? You go into another room and you shake it off. And guess what? You may have to shake it off several times from head to toe, like this dog here. And think about it. If a dog is happy to see you, that dog will shake from head to toe. If that dog is angry at you, it will shake from head to toe. If two ducks get into a fight, the fight lasts for a couple seconds, they swim away. What is the first thing that they do? They violently flap their wings. Why? Because they're conscious enough to know that there's this vibration inside their body. Now, they may not know that it's anger. If they were to suppress it like us humans do, then what would happen is they'd swim around the lake or the pond waiting for Bob to come around to pop them in the beak. They don't do that. What they do is they let it go. They let it go. Us humans, we don't. And trust me, these practices that I'm talking about, I have to do, my wife has to do, we both have to do them constantly, because we also still deal with a lot of the same issues that you deal with as well. So the next time your spouse upsets you, well, I would shake it off. I'd recommend going into another room first and shaking it off, because you might create more of an argument, or who knows, you might create a little bit of humor and it may diffuse the argument altogether. And the key is also is that you may have to shake it off throughout the day. I had a situation with my older half brother 4 years ago or so. Wrote this nasty condescending email one morning when I was getting everybody ready to go to school and stuff like that. And I had to shake it off. And throughout the day, guess what? The thought would come up into my mind. And when I feel that tension inside my body, I would just shake it off. So this is what I'm talking about, the simplicity. It's so simple to do, but yet it's so profound in what it does for your body and what it does for your mind. Okay, so from here, the next favorite practice I love in Qigong is the healing sounds. Did you know that of our 5 major organs of our body, they all have a different sound vibration that's associated with them? Each of these 5 organs also are all benefited by a certain flavor, like sour, pungent, salty, sweet, or bland, etc. Did you know that 5 colors, the 5 colors of red, green, orange, white or silver, and blue all benefit different organs of the body? Did you know that different directions, north, south, east, and west, all benefit these different organs of the body? But one of my favorite things to teach is the healing sounds. And when I was a keynote speaker for the cybersecurity conference, because talk about burnout. If you're working cybersecurity, that's a stressful job because that's something that never ends. Once you develop something that helps to stop the hackers, guess what? There's something else that you're being faced with. So one of my favorite things that I did was that I gave the healing sounds for the heart. Why? Because once again, going back to the mind body connection, the heart is the emperor, empress of the body. And besides attacking all the emotions that will attack and pass through the heart and then transfer to the corresponding organs, the heart is affected by abandonment and loneliness, lack of joy. But too much joy, mania. Did you know that you could actually die of a heart attack from laughing too hard? And if you think about it, what happens when you laugh hysterically at something? The first thing you and everybody else does, myself included, is we go, ah. Or if you lost a loved one, your pet had to be put to sleep or ran away, you start to hear people sigh a lot, or they will yawn a lot. Why? Because the heart is trying to release this emotion, right? And we don't realize that we're sighing because the heart is hurt or our heart is broken. So the healing sound is ha, like laughing. So the next time something happens to you, but more importantly too, a past trauma, I want you to focus on it as you inhale. Imagine this pink cloud filling up into the heart. And then as you exhale, lifting the chin and making the sound audibly. Imagine that circumstance leaving like a dark cloud, going several feet away from the body and deep into the ground. Inhaling. And what you'll see is that you will be able to release that current trauma, that circumstance. But also too, like I said, I want you to also pick off the scab. So unlike conventional therapy sometimes where they have you pick off the scab to relive a certain circumstance, and then you don't really have a tool afterwards. In this case here, I want you to pick off the scab because our issues do lie in the tissues. The issues do lie in the tissues and do obstruct the proper functioning of these internal organs, which shows up as a disease. So yes, I want you to focus on that situation, whatever it is, who's involved, was it inside, outside, were there certain smells, what was going on, feel it. And then as you inhale, and then you release it. Now, it's okay if different thoughts or different traumas come up into your mind as you're doing this. This is okay. And try doing this for 10 or 15 minutes to start to process those old traumas, because what we tend to do is we tend to stuff it. And when we stuff it, this is what shows up as disease. The other cool thing about this healing sound, this Qigong practice, is that you can do it in underneath your breath as well too. So if you're in public and something's going on with you, and you all of a sudden you're feeling some grief or somebody upset you, or you're feeling anxious going into a meeting, do the sound underneath your breath. All right, so such a simple Qigong practice to do. All right, well, the other thing too is that for myself anyways, well, like I said, I was a butcher for 21 years. Even though I did drugs through high school, I still was highly driven. I got my AP studies in art. I still today have a couple art scholarships I have not used for college, but I did have an freelance art business. In high school, starting my sophomore year, I went to high school part-time, and I went to an adult educational school where I got my Class A state brake license, my license for overhauling engines. So my attitude was, okay, if I don't make it as an artist, I'll be a butcher. If I don't make it as a butcher, I'll be a mechanic, but being a healer or being a Qigong Tai Chi instructor was never there was never something that I even thought about as being my life purpose. But the cool thing too is if Qigong is on the rise, more and more people now are starting to recognize the benefits. Harvard Medical School is writing tons of papers on the benefits of Qigong. Stanford's writing lots of papers on the benefits of Qigong. And now more than ever, people are requesting Qigong, especially through this situation, through this pandemic state that we're in and what's going on in the world and what's going on in our government and such, is that we need to be able to create change. And to be able to create change, guess who it starts with? Right here. And the cool thing is that if you want to become a Qigong teacher, then guess what? You have an opportunity to further dive deeper into yourself while you're giving back to the whole. And that's such a beautiful thing. There's nothing more beautiful than that. And you know, one of the interesting things about life purpose. So several years ago, or about 4 years ago, we were taking CEU classes at Yosan University with Dr. Mao Xingni, and Dr. Mao had said, he said, you know, before, well, first thing he said, you know, there's about 60 or 70 people in the audience, doc, physicians, you name it, all types of acupuncturists. But he said, okay, a raise of hands. How many people in this room here are happy with their career choice? And believe it or not, only several of us rose our hands. He goes, wow, that's really interesting. He goes, because a lot of people don't realize this, but before you come into this life form, you sign a contract with heaven that you are to find your life purpose. Because the only way that God or the Tao can express itself through you is by you finding something that you truly love to do. I know when towards the latter years of me being a butcher, as I was building the Morning Korean Healing Arts Center in San Jose, I dreaded going to work. I dreaded it. So I was not living my life purpose. I did not, you know, back when I started being a butcher, believe it or not, I really enjoyed it because, you know, I worked with a lot of guys. It was a craft back then. It was, believe it or not, it was like an artistic craft too, because, you know, merchandising and all that kind of stuff. But over the years, it lost all of that. And I really could not, like the night before I'd have to go into work from a day off, I would, you know, I would have so much tension because I dreaded it so much. So the great thing is that when you find your life purpose, what happens is you enhance your own well-being. You see that automatically you have improved health. So once again, if you're somebody that says, and we've had quite a few people that have come through our Qigong teacher training program that have gone off and started teaching on their own and are doing quite amazing because they also get to give back to themselves. So you get to help others. You could expand your practice. So let's say you're a practitioner already, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, a physician. You know, John Kabat-Zinn started the mindfulness revolution back in, I believe it was the 90s, and back in the 80s. And doctors, other physicians at the time thought that he was crazy. But what he realized is that when he taught these Buddhist mindfulness meditations to his patients, guess what? They healed much faster. So amazing. So like I was talking about earlier, during the pandemic, you know, we started off with the 7-day Chi Challenge, thanks to my friend, Hollywood physique expert, Eric the trainer. And what ended up happening was that it benefited people so much that we were doing I was doing the classes 3 days a week for free. And because we saw that people were losing their jobs or being out of work due to the pandemic. And we did, you know, it was just doing it out of the love and fun of connecting with the community of people like yourself. And, you know, really giving the love and the self-empowerment that guess what, everything is going to be okay, right? Everything is going to be okay. And, you know, I didn't realize the impact. We didn't realize the impact that these free Qigong classes, half-hour classes had on the public from around the world. We have participants from around the world until we started the economy start to open up again. Then we started the Qi Club, where we have the class every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 8 to 8:30. When we started that and had that transition, people from around the world started sending us donation checks and these beautiful emails, sending us cards and letters on just how empowering this practice was. And especially in this time of darkness, how it helped how they had something to look forward to, how it gave them hope and how it gave them the strength and the resiliency to be able to transcend above and beyond what was going on around the world. So this is so much fun, and this is something I recommend that you would do too. Go to the qiclub.com and register, but it's great. It's such a fun way to practice. But really what I'm here about is our Qigong teacher training program. And we recognize that most people that take our program from around the world do not want to teach. What people are doing is they're signing up because they want to dive deeper. They want to be committed. You know, one of the things that Jim Rohn had said also, he said, if somebody writes a book on how to prevent heart disease, let's say the book costs $29.99. He said, that $29.99, is paying for the ink, the paper, the editing, the publication of the book. But he said, you can, if that book on preventing heart disease, uh, if that book preventing heart on how to prevent heart disease saves your life, you can't put a price tag on that. Because ultimately, if you're suffering and you're struggling and not living the life to your fullest, then that's not a life that you're meant to live. The life that you're meant to live is to be able to live your life to the fullest. So what we found is that people from around the world, a lot of people, what they do is they take our Qigong teacher training course in order to dive deeper, in order to deal with those past traumas. And guess what? When you deal with the past traumas, then guess what? You have the vitality and the life that you deserve to live. So in this course, it's a 13-week course. Level 1 is a 13-week course, and you'll be able to, you'll receive tips and tools in order, and cultivation techniques in order to build your tolerance for challenge and to be able to beat the burnout. Foundational Qigong practices that will help you with your personal well-being, which once again, this is priceless. And also too, what's going to happen is that we didn't talk about it today, but normally I talk about the deaths and the injuries that result from negative emotions attacking different organs of the body. So you'll be surprised at how many diseases out there are as a result of these emotional traumas being shoved down, and then more and more trauma being stacked on top of it that shows up as disease. So your personal well-being is priceless. And like I said, if you want to become a teacher, you have such the great foundation, because we believe that this is the most comprehensive teacher training out there, because I'm not just teaching you Qigong because it feels good and it's warm and fuzzy. I'm teaching it to you because I want you to understand how each movement or specific guided meditation, no matter how simplistic that it is meant to do something medicinally inside your body. So like Tom and Michelle here, what's very fascinating is that Michelle finished our level 1, they're a husband and wife team, our level 1 teacher training. She does a lot of work with women's groups out there. And Tom now has just started, actually today we just started a level 2 Qigong teacher training course. And, like what Tom said, and Tom came to me when he started level 1, he goes, Chris, I'm really nervous about this because I don't normally take courses. And one of the things, as you can see here, in his testimonial is that he appreciated the fact that, let's say if I'm talking about the heart cleansing exercise, that we gave practices or we gave the information in various different ways, so that way he and everybody else who takes the course can absorb the information and truly understand what benefits and what it's doing to the body. Because when we have symptoms and signs that show up, then guess what happens? That is your body's way of knocking on your door that, hey, we need to do something about this. And so this is something that he's done for himself, that he's so passionate about now, because he's seen after finishing level 1, all the growth and transformation that has happened. And thank you, Tom, for writing this beautiful testimonial. So here we go. Level 1 starts here in a couple weeks. June 28th. This is when it starts. And what's going to happen is that each Monday on the start, what will happen is you'll receive 4 videos. You also will receive a PDF downloads for that specific practice of the week. Also will receive a free binder. You'll receive the book, my book, for free, Qigong teacher training shirt. But also if you sign up today, it's only $19.95, or it's 3 payments of $6.96. And if you sign up by Friday, you'll get 6 months in the Qi Club for free, which is a $174 value. And we're throwing in there also is a free Zoom session with myself or Parisa to ask whatever health questions that you want, or if you're going into this level 1 Qigong teacher training and you have some questions that you may have or whatnot, then this is the opportunity to answer those questions. And this is a $225 value. So we're really giving a lot here because, again, when you give, it comes back tremendously. And again, even if you don't want to become a teacher trainer yourself, just sharing this with your parents, maybe they suffer from diabetes or hypertension. Being able to understand how these practices benefit the body and release emotional trauma and help to get the organs to function with each other the way that they're supposed to. Once again, it's really just is priceless. So as you see here, this Yvette here that's over to my right, she's right over here. When she first came, she came to we had a contract with Open Space Authority. Talk about testimonials. Open Space Authority was sponsoring us to go out to the different parks to give free Tai Chi and Qigong classes. And so the sponsors and the public could come for free. Anyways, Yvette had RA. She was bedridden for 2 to 3 years. And what had happened was that she came to that class, that free class, and felt amazing. She took the level 1, level 2 Qigong teacher training program. She decided she was a hairdresser. As you can see, her hair looks pretty vibrant and healthy there. She was a hairdresser before, had a successful career prior to the RA sitting in. And what she realized, no, once she started doing the practices and started to take part in the teacher training program, she started to feel this vibrancy. The RA went away. And guess what she's doing now? She's actually out there. I'm so proud of her. She's actually teaching to the public as well. Christine Castillo, over to the far right or to my far left there in the gray shirt. She has translated my Qigong book into Spanish. She is now finishing up massage school, and she's coming into our clinic to work. She's also one of our Qigong teachers that we contract out for the county and for the hospital systems. She's doing classes for the low income communities, for the Hispanic communities, and we love her so much, her dedication. So anyways, I can't just say enough just how grateful I am to have this opportunity to be able to share this information with you, and the possibility for you then to embrace this information, and then you ultimately living the life that you would want to live and deserve to live.
Oh, thank you so much. And now we're opening it up for questions. And your story about Yvette actually ties into the next question from Kat, who's written
Hi, Kat.
Hi, she says, hi, I have chronic fatigue syndrome. I can't do exercises even if they are seemingly simple every day. Maybe once a week more realistic. But then would I get any benefit from Qigong without the regular repetition?
Yes, because even if you can, and this is what I tell people, let's say it's not only people with chronic fatigue syndrome or in certain inflammatory diseases, or maybe you're somebody who's suffering from a febrile disease like cancer, and you're going through chemotherapy or radiation, you have no energy because your blood is weak. What's great about these practices is that you could do them from a seated or a lying down position, believe it or not. And some of the movements, like let's say if this is the liver move, for example, to help to clear the liver of anger, hatred, and resentment and old anger, then what happens is that you could watch the videos that are part of the program. And what will happen is that you could visualize yourself doing it as opposed to actually doing it. And guess what? Believe it or not, like going back to Yvette, she could not get out of bed. And she could only do practices a little bit at a time. She also had chronic fatigue syndrome as well too. But slowly she started to build on the practice slowly. And guess what? She was able to transform the disease, but also in the process, she was able to fully grasp and understand what the emotional component was, which created it in the first place. So great question. Thank you so much.
Okay, I have another question. So someone who's thinking about signing up for the course but is extremely busy, what would the time commitment for the course look like?
That's a great thing. And the nice thing about you get the free download or the downloads every Monday is that means that you get to do this this program around your schedule. So I'm going to recommend that it's going to probably be an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours at the most per week. But the great thing about it is that you get to actually do these practices at your own leisure. And the cool thing too is all the information, so the 4 video downloads, the PDFs, etc., those are yours for a lifetime. So once you have it, it's yours forever. So it's not like, oh, once the course is over with, then you lose all that information. No, that information is yours forever.
Okay, well, what about people who do not want to teach but just want to learn more?
Well, that's my thing is that there is that possibility if you do want to teach to be able to make this into a career if you wanted to do that. But really, this is really about self-discovery of the self and really or really living that life that you deserve to live. And like what Kat's question, nobody should have to suffer with chronic fatigue syndrome. Our bodies, if you look at our DNA, and Deepak Chopra wrote a book several years ago with a top brain surgeon, and it talked about, it's called the super gene, and in that book they talked about how the helix of our DNA, most of it's healthy. So even if you were, let's say, born into a family with hypertension or diabetes or depression or schizophrenia, it's been proven scientifically, it's proven that if you change the environment, if you change your diet, and if you change how you emotionally respond to situations and stimuli, then guess what? You will not get the disease. So the great thing about this teacher training program is it's about self-empowerment, self-empowerment. For you to be able to stand and walk in your truth, for you to be able to live really pain-free and out of disease and not suffering. It's really important. So I would say that once again, I just have to really reiterate: most people that take the Qigong teacher training course do not do it to go out there to teach. Most people do it like what Yvette initially. Yvette, for example, was just taking it to improve her health because she saw from after taking that one class at Open Space at Don Edwards that one day that how well she felt. So she was just doing it to feel better. And then once she cured herself of her disease, of her ailments, then she went off and started teaching.
This is a comment question from Matt Nielsen.
Oh, hi, Matt. How are you doing?
He says, very impressive presentation. I would love to go through the training. How would it work if you have pain in many parts of your body, swelling and bloating? Would I be able to do it?
Yes, Matt, I do believe that you would be able to do it because what would happen is that you'd actually would be able to dive deeper into understanding the etiology behind what's going on. And when you're doing the practices like you are, and then there's also with the teacher training course, we also have a forum. And this forum, people post their questions or whatever's going on with them, and then other people in your community also will respond. So you'll find that if you have a committed practice, at least for 13 weeks, that, hey, I'm at least going to watch the videos. I'm going to try to do as much as I can as far if your energy is weak or whatever, maybe modifying the movements. Like I said, maybe you're not doing standing Qigong movements. Maybe you're sitting down while you're doing it. Maybe you're just visualizing it. But the benefits are profound. It's really about opening up yourself to be able to have a practice that kind of holds you accountable, because we all need to be held accountable for our own health care, because we are responsible for our own lives. And like I said, I could use my family's history. My mom died 19 years ago on Cinco de Mayo from MS, and she suffered for over 20 years. That's a horrible way to die. And but if you look at my mom, I mean, obviously, if I grew up in this dysfunctional home, she suffered with a lot of abuse. She suffered with it and didn't have the tools to be able to process it. And so as a result, this MS is what showed up inside of her body.
Okay, there's one more question from Claudine.
Hi, Claudine.
Yes, okay. Well, I'm gonna ask it. She has a great point here, saying masks are still required in public in California. I can't imagine doing Qigong with a mask on. How do you deal with that in San Jose?
Wow, that's a really great question. And I was, Claudine, I was actually on a podcast yesterday called Unslaved, and it was the second time they invited me back on, and it was a very profound conversation about this very subject and Qigong. And and that's one of the things is that for me, and Chinese medicine, most people don't realize Chinese medicine was based upon viruses and bacteria. It wasn't until the early 1100s AD that the Chinese started to recognize viruses. Prior to that, because what happens is that when viruses come into the body, We no longer look at it as a virus. What we look at it as is that, okay, well, what is its condition? Is it a hot or cold condition? Is it a yin and yang condition? Is it an internal, external condition? Is it an excess or deficient condition? Is it, what organ and organ systems is it affecting? And so what happens is that herbal formulas and stuff like that, thousands of years ago, were developed, and we utilized through the pandemic. Honestly, we utilized those very same formulas to help patients with COVID and to help patients with the common flu. And so, yeah, it's a tricky question.
Can I step in there for a second? I would just like to say what we've been doing is we keep our socially distanced, we go outside, and ultimately we leave the mask as an option. If you feel comfortable, you want to wear a mask, then you keep your mask on. And if you prefer not to wear a mask, then it's not we don't necessarily enforce that. Of course, this is on a public forum and we want to follow all of the public rules in California, doing business in California. So it is definitely a fine line to accommodate and make everyone happy in that situation.
Yeah, and so far, because we have other teachers that have started teaching for different public institutions, because now things are opening back up again, and those public institutions have not enforced the mask. They made it optional. The main thing that they're still doing is social distancing, and some of these classes that those teachers are teaching at are outdoors or in the woods, So yeah. So, and and this is a really interesting subject because, really, if our immune systems are strong, and guess what? And then we have a greater ability to ward off the intrusions. And that's one of the things that you actually will learn in the teacher training program is how does our immune system actually work? Because it works differently in Chinese medicine as opposed to Western medicine. So such a great, tricky question.
All right, well, that concludes the questions, unless anyone has any more.
Okay, so anyways, once again, ran about 10 minutes over here. I really love and appreciate the opportunity to serve everybody. I love and appreciate the fact that you all have joined us today, during your lunch hour. We do have another webinar next Monday at 10 a.m. And please share this. And if anything, what we're after here is to empower you to have deeper knowledge of how your body functions and how your emotions create discord inside the body, and you have the tools necessary to be able to change those dysfunction. And once again, I keep on saying this, but ultimately living the ultimate life that you deserve to live.
Oh, one last point. If someone wants to sign up, how would they do that?
Oh, go to the QigongTeacherTraining.com. Go to QigongTeacherTraining.com, or you can email Parisa. So it's Parisa, it's like Paris with an A, at morningcrane.com.
All right.
So,
Thank
okay.
You,
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And we will see you later. Have a blessed day. Namaste.